Hey, good morning. Welcome to week four of our class. So I hope that things are going well. Um, the plan for this week, the videos that we're going to take a look at here as I share my screen, are going to all be geared towards helping you with writing Project One. So where I'd like to begin is just returning to the assignment sheet for writing Project One and taking a look at the grading criteria, the first part of the grading criteria, the first two parts specifically, right? So we've got recognizing genre, and if you're doing it correctly, you've identified an established genre in your reflection and have explained its conventions. So we are going to eventually write a reflection for this paper, and in there, you're kind of going to be justifying the ways that your project, your remediated um, story that you're sharing, fits within whatever respective genre you chose to adapt your project into, your story into. And we do so by recognizing these things that we refer to as conventions of that genre, right? So, what are those things that tell me that this is in fact a podcast, that this is a TikTok account, that this is, a YouTube video essay. And so this week we're going to be focusing on that stuff. I need you to not only commit to one, but commit to something that actually exists. I've never had a student send a project in that's so original that it kind of defies all of the established genres um, that we already interact with, on a daily basis on social media, in our free time when we're going, we go and are seeking out entertainment, looking for ways to, just engage with different forms of media. I've never had a student do something that's so different that it exceeds and therefore transcends this first grading criteria. It's the opposite. If they're doing something that isn't an established genre, that's because it wouldn't be something that we would actually see posted on social media because it's oftentimes too obtuse. It's too there's not a lot of effort put into it. That's really the biggest thing, right? Is that the example I always pull from is that I received a project idea or a completed project rather that was just a video, AI generated, mind you, of waves crashing onto the beach. No music, it wasn't posted on a social media account, it was just waves crashing onto a beach. And of course, the reflection did nothing to kind of explain what this was supposed to be. And so that's what I mean. That's not something you would just see on social media. You're not scrolling and you find a post that's just random waves crashing on the beach. And if it were, it'd be accompanied with music, it'd be accompanied with captions, right? If that's something you come across, then you would be thinking, oh, this person is certainly not someone I'm interested in following. And that's really like the reason why I have to emphasize this first point when we're going through the grading criteria. You have to choose something that exists so that we can identify those conventions, right? We get into the next one over here, meeting genre conventions. Your narrative fits well within the genres of the genre, or it fits well within the conventions of the genre identified in your reflection. So to start, I have a couple of podcasts that I'm just going to play the first couple minutes of. And what I'd like to do is just sort of break down things that we would identify as conventions of a podcast, right? And so in your own head, if you listen to podcasts, feel free to contribute whatever you would like to that conversation. Um, because what I'd like to do, and this is kind of going into the exercise for the week, the discussion board for the week, the genre conventions exercise, where I'm going to give you three different genres, and within those three genres, there might be two creators to look at, there might be three creators to look at, but I'm going to ask you for homework to respond to that discussion board with your own list of conventions for each of these different genres that you'll be asked to explore. And so it makes sense for us to start with podcasts because that's the most popular project idea. And with that, um, since a lot of people are going to choose to do that, it just gives us an opportunity to not only talk about things that I'll be looking for if you choose to make a podcast, but also like a foundation for how to do this discussion board, right? So you see exactly what I mean by like trying to identify the conventions, right? It could be the technical elements that are involved in there. It could be something like the equipment that's used. It's certainly things that are the creative decisions, right? So the themes that we're noticing. If it's a visual project and the aesthetic of it, what kind of content is it that they're expected to post and how do they go about doing so, right? How do they share their story using this genre? And so let's take a look at these examples. It is a football podcast, so be mindful of that if you're not a big football person. But at any rate, I'm just going to play first couple of minutes of this.
Yo, we we really got to stop using plastic, dude. We need to make a team effort to not use plastic anymore. What do you guys think?
Don't like it.
Why not? PP's in. That's one. Juice, what do you think? Just ditching plastic. I mean, I got a plastic bottle in my hand. I got a plastic latte thing, but I got this Yeti bit. I'm thinking we dip on plastic. Let's do our best to reduce the eco footprint. What do you think?
I can try to be better too. Yeah.
All right, that's a perfect
Yeah, I like that.
That's a perfect segue into busting with the boys.
Oh, hey, can you hit that AC? Just
No,
to the
no.
lower. We're just gonna turn it down. To the
Dude,
lower.
it's so hot.
Can you hear it?
Yeah, I can hear it,
I know.
but I'm gonna talk about it.
Yo, I love the whole music bit now. Oh, this could be our theme song.
Sounds like a
All right, so let's go ahead and pause it there. We're about a minute into this episode. Um, I hope we're already noticing some things from this very early episode of a podcast that grew to be quite popular. I hope we're noticing some things that they're not doing well. That it's clear they haven't planned out what this episode is going to be, right? If we're thinking about this, I mean, we're watching the YouTube version of it, we're seeing the video version of it, but if we're thinking about the podcast as first and foremost an audio form of media, an audio only form of media. If we're driving in our car or like working out and listening to this, the very beginning of the episode, we don't have any sort of introduction. We're getting like a bunch of background noise, people like fumbling around with something that if it's off screen, we don't know what's happening. We're likely thinking that our Spotify app crashed and we're going to be checking our phone while we should be watching the road. You know, so this idea of dead air where it's just nothing's being said, there's no music, there's no filler content, and also outside ambient noise, right? These are things that we want to be mindful of and avoid entirely in our own work. So, of course, as you're deciding what project you want to do, and if you elect to do a podcast, make sure you're going to record in a space where it's quiet. Okay, record in the space where you have some privacy. You're not going to have people coming in and interrupting you. Be mindful of your own little physical isms, right? So if you tend to tap, or if you're like clicking a pen or something, do your best to just sit still. Maybe record, a few times if you're nervous the first go around. I know it's kind of awkward hearing your voice recorded if you've never done it before. Um, but just set yourself up nicely, set yourself up comfortably so that we can avoid some of these issues that clearly these guys were still figuring out. We don't get any sort of introduction. This is the fourth episode. Who are you? What are your names? What's the name of the show? We had the logo at the very beginning, but if this is my first time tuning in, I'm not going to understand what's going on, right? I'm not going to understand that this is a football podcast. I'm not going to understand that they're former football players. Now, the thing about podcasts is oftentimes, especially in like the sort of comedic realm, this freestyle, off the cuff um, format is very popular. And so I'm not suggesting that you can't do that. I'm not suggesting you script out every single word that you're going to say in the podcast, because you are allowed to bring guests on. You're allowed to have interviews. You're allowed to have a co host if that makes you more comfortable. But if you're going to do the freestyle one, and you're just kind of free 4 minute, right? Just going with whatever's on your mind, you're allowed to do that by all means. But make sure it still feels like it has some structure, okay? Not like these guys where it's just like we have space to fill. We have empty negative space where nothing's going on. They're like still trying to figure out theme music. They haven't done so yet. I love that he's like, we're seeing in real time them trying to decide what the theme song is going to be for the show. They're still working out the kinks. Now let's take a look at a more recent episode. Um, okay, so this was, that was episode 4, about 3, 4 years ago. This one is about from a year and a half ago. Now let's pay attention to this because you're going to see that a lot more thought has gone into it. Um, it's a lot more organized.
An offense, and then you see, hey man, they attack you in this way, and I'm a safety. I'm like, I play every position. I know what everybody's doing. If I know the ball's going there, coach, I'm just gonna switch with him.
Welcome to another episode of Bustin' with the Boys. As always, we are your hosts, Will Compton, Taylor Lewan. A combined 18 years in the NFL, a combined 3 Pro Bowls amongst each other, a combined 1 combine invite amongst each other. This show brings the locker room to life with you guys. If you're watching right now, please make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Leave comments with the boys. If you're listening on audio, Spotify, Apple, Google, whatever the case may be, again, make sure you're following, make sure you're subscribed to the boys. In this episode, we have on the Troy Polamalu, a decorated Hall of Famer. And his conversation, we hated it. We only got about 30 minutes because of his time frame. We hated that we had to sit with him for such a short amount of time. But absolute football porn, the game within the game, father talk, dad talk. We also get into the dad club in this intro. The intro is about 120 minutes long. If you want the Troy Polamalu episode or the interview itself by itself, Mitch does a fabulous job of putting those chapters in the YouTube, so that way you can fast forward or skip ahead if you want to. But if you're a tier 1, where you should be a tier 1, follow along Bustin' with the Boys. Our intro, we talk about the combine. We get into the Antonio Brown Barstool drama. We're going to Miami this week for UFC 299. We have a great twisted question by Mitch. Shout out, no free shout out. And we talk dad club. We vent a little bit. We tell some stories. We talk shop. You're going to love the episode. We have a lot of ad reads in this episode, so we apologize ahead of time. People love to advertise to the boys. Bear with us. You're going to love the episode. Without further ado, here is the intro of Bustin' with the Boys, and then Troy Polamalu. Big hugs, tiny kisses.
All right, so we can tell that this is a later episode. They know their brand now. They know how it is, what their audience wants. They know what they should do, right, when approaching new audience. And so this gives us some things that we can include in our own work. And so it makes sense, of course, to start with the introduction. You are going to be making this project, and it's your very first episode, right? So, of course, we need to know, what's the name of your podcast, right? Who are you? Introduce us. Welcome that audience in. I love that, this is episode whatever they said, like 180. And they're still giving that same sort of spiel at the very beginning, where it's kind of just like, hey, here's who we are. This is our show. This is our brand. Here's what to expect on today's episode. But just in general, they're still giving us like, so whether you're what they refer to as like a tier one fan, someone who just like listens to every single episode, or this is your first time tuning in, um, you're always getting that same sort of introduction. And if you're a tier one guy, yeah, you know who these guys are, but they do it in this way that feels um, organic, right? It doesn't feel like, oh, they're just repeating. Yes, we know that you're Taylor and Will, and we're listening to Bussin' with the Boys, right? No, they do it in this way that feels organic. It feels entertaining. It feels considerate. And then for those people that this is your first time listening to the episode, it's not like you're just coming in without any reference. Like, oh, what's going on in the show? Who are these guys? Like, what they give that same sort of introduction that varies, right? They say will say different things, but it's always this sort of formal. Hey, this is our show. Here's who we are, and I feel like that's very important to do. But especially for us, since this is our first episode, of course, give your podcast a name, introduce yourself to your audience. I also like the idea of the episode breakdown, right? Preview what's going to go on today's episode. I love that the guys they kind of break it down into different chapters, right? And so these chapters are what we can think about as segments, right? I mean, we're doing a much shorter episode. They did like a 2 hour long episode, so they had to go in technically, into YouTube and split it up. So just in case people wanted to like fast forward through it, they had the option of clicking through under the episode, to the different chapters that are going on. But essentially, these are just the segments, right? And we think about our work, whether we're doing a podcast, whether we're doing a video, in the same sort of way. Because we're not going to have a 10-minute podcast and I'm just introducing myself the entire time. And we also don't want to have a podcast where it's like, oh, hey, I'm remediating my literacy narrative. And so I'm just going to talk about that literacy narrative the entire time. Once again, we want to expand upon this idea. We want to expand upon your story and bring in new ideas, new content to this. You are not beholden to just what you wrote in the literacy narrative now that you're remediating the project. I want you to go into new directions. So, ideas for other segments. Like we mentioned before, if you want to bring guests on, please do so. So, whether that's in the form of a co host or thinking about segments, it could be an interview, right? And we'll see. The great thing about the podcast editing software that I'm asking us to use, Riverside, it allows you to record live meetings digitally. So you don't have to be in the same room with the person if you want to invite a guest on and do an interview or do a co-host thing. It'll be just like, a Zoom meeting, where you send people the link, they log in, you hit the record button, and then you can just go off. So interviews are great. So if there's someone from your lit narrative that you feel like is, a character from there that you're still in touch with, you have the opportunity to speak with them, even if you can't be in the same room together. So I think that's awesome. I like this idea of fan interaction as well. They have this sort of twisted question, if you picked up on that, and that's like every week they will just kind of comb through the comment section on their videos and on their social media, and they ask people to like send in would you rather questions, or like if you had one superpower, what would it be? And so I love that, right? That's kind of in the tradition of like the old talk shows where they get fan mail in and they're like reading letters that are sent to them. So something like that is great to do, right? Because it's just, again, it's showing that you're paying attention. It's showing that you want to, interact with the fans. And again, you have to you got to fake it, right? You don't have actual fan interactions over here, but this is where I'm asking you to have fun with it, right? This is where I'm asking you to toy around with these ideas. Another thing that so of course you're remediating a story that you told. So it makes sense to have a segment where it's just dedicated to that story. And that could even be like the bulk of your show, right? Is just talking about that story. But of course, we want to bring in, different details, new anecdotes, new directions, right? Liven it up. Don't just take your literacy narrative and read it word for word in the podcast. And with that, this goes into the next thing. Anecdotes, but also like commentary on things that are happening in your life, that are happening around the world. Like podcasts are like this vehicle now for like um, political and social discourse. The sort of pull that a lot of these podcasters have, I would argue, is what like the late show hosts used to have, 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, where they would have guests on and there would be kind of like political banter or social banter or, celebrity gossip, whatever it is. I would argue that a lot of these podcasters are, you know, they're like the new generation's um, Dick Cavett and Johnny Carson, David Letterman. These people exist now on podcasts, and so if you want to have parts of this podcast where you're reacting to what's going on in the world, if you're commenting on things that are happening. The example I always pull is that I had a student who wrote about basketball and how basketball was an important part of his high school career and continues to play it. But then he made sort of like an inside the NBA podcast show for his project where he's just like, hey, here are my picks for the week, right? Here are my sports bets for the week. Oh, hey, what's going on with like NBA news? Talking about his favorite teams, and so that's what I mean by expanding upon it. You're not just like limited. Well, you wrote a story about playing basketball in high school, so that's what the podcast has to be about. It doesn't, right? And as long as, again, in the reflection that we end up writing, as long as you can justify those choices, explain those to me, then I'm fine with you doing whatever. Ad reads, love ad reads. Ad reads are great. So think about things where it's like, hey, what's my brand? What's my identity? And maybe I want to throw in an ad read in there just to kind of like the guys, they always the Bussin' with the Boys guys, they start every episode off with the same ad read from Chevy Silverado. Does that make sense from a football podcast for retired football players, self-proclaimed lunch pail guys, kind of blue collar? Does it make sense for them to have a Chevy Silverado advertisement read? Of course it does. So think about like what would fit for you, what fits with your brand. Um, Music, yes, music. So we noticed in the second iteration of the podcast that they did have a little theme song. Um, Riverside, right, allows you to use stock music and put that into your podcast, but you can also upload music separately, um, MP3 files, and chop that up and put that as your theme music if you'd rather do that. But all that stuff will be gone over in the tech tutorials folder where I talk briefly about CapCut. I talk a little more in depth about Riverside. So we cover all those bases in the other video under tech tutorials. So be mindful. But yes, music. We want to have at least intro music, maybe outro music, right? Transitions between segments is always nice. Having like an underscore if you're telling a story and then there's like a certain point where you want to build tension or you're like leading up to something, then maybe having a little background music playing would be good, but should match the brand of your podcast to the best of your ability. Formatting it, right? Or decide, do you want this to be scripted? Do you want to go off the cuff freestyle? Think about what works best for you, right? Oftentimes you start recording and you realize that you can just keep talking and talking and talking and you'll have no problem meeting the minimum requirements. But sometimes that's also like a con, right? To the podcast thing where it's like, oh, I've been talking for 25 minutes over here and I haven't even gotten to like what I've wanted to say. So think about that. I still, even if you go freestyle, try to structure it. Maybe do a mix of both. Script the intro and then whatever works for you. Up to you, but it gives you some things to talk about in your reflection. Like we said earlier, avoid the dead air, avoid background noise, avoid tapping on their microphone. You don't have to have perfect equipment for this, right? I'm not expecting anyone has, excellent equipment. And we're noticing that's not any of the stuff that I'm grading you on, right? I'm grading you on your adherence to something like these conventions. And none of this is like, oh, you went to a studio and you used, $1,000 microphone. Nothing to do with that. All this stuff is achievable for free. Appropriate timing, so just like making sure the segments are all planned out and nothing's going on for too long, or there's no gaps. Or again, like if I have a 10-minute podcast, I don't want to be introducing the podcast for 8 of those minutes and then have the other segments just be like 2 minutes. Like that wouldn't make any sense. And also things like this, like if you want to create like a little logo, right, for your podcast, if you want to create merch, I don't know, that just shows me that you're taking it seriously and you're having fun with it. Um, if you want to create like a social media page, because obviously it's like the question becomes, we have podcasts, but then how do we market the podcast? How do I get people, to be interested in this? So maybe if you wanted to make an accompanying Instagram page or something to promote it, whatever you want to do, right? This would only improve your grade, your ability to just embrace this reality and work with this stuff. But essentially, this is what I'm asking you to do for the discussion board this week. Okay, and so ultimately, what I want to do is, with all your input after reading the discussion board, I'll post this genre conventions document again, but I'll include the things that you all are going to respond with on the discussion board. So let's return now to our page. Okay, so week 4 content, we've got 4 different content folders, right? And so the first one is where we're going to find the genre conventions discussion board. And you know what? I might just move this outside of there just to make it a discussion board on its own. I think it's kind of arbitrary to include another um, folder for no reason. But at any rate, here's the discussion board, right? So I'm asking you all to examine these 3 genres. And so with the first genre, we call it a TikTok slideshow or a TikTok aesthetic page. We have 2 different accounts. So we have the digital videos account and the Tesla account. Try to see what they have in common, right? So I grouped all these together for a reason, right? But yes, they're approaching in different ways, but they're doing things, they're adhering to conventions that I would consider like, the way that we sort of categorize them into this subgenre, whether that's the aesthetic TikTok, the mood board TikTok, the photography, kind of like the showcasing of art TikTok page. As you'll see, these are both photographers slash videographers. So those are the first 2, right? Second one is a video essay. So it's a YouTube video essay on video games, about a 5-minute watch. And the third one, day in the life reels. So these are like mini vlogs, almost like a get ready with me. This third one about the writer is like a get ready with me, but these are shorter ones, all about like 60 seconds each. But you're going to go through this, and in the discussion board, kind of like we did in this document, right? You'll just kind of do like, okay, genre 1, and then just start listing, start listing the conventions that you notice. So think about things like, okay, how are they using music? How are they using captions? What sort of images are playing on screen? What am I seeing? How about the narration, right? Is someone talking or is someone not talking? Am I seeing the author, the creator on screen? And if I am, how are they filming themselves? If I'm not, what are they having in lieu of their presence? What are they having instead of them being on screen? How are they editing all this together? This is what I mean by conventions, okay? And so do your best to list as many as you can. If you'd rather upload this as a Word document, you can do so, right? You can click the little plus button and insert local files. If it's easier to do it as a Word document instead of a discussion board, that's fine. Either one works for me. But this is the discussion board assignment